Thank you for being here.
Of course. Glad to be here. I'm going to have a seat.
I love it.
I like your style. I'm trying something new today.
You really are. I don't think I could pull that off. Thanks for being here. To kind of get us started, I'd love for you to walk us through your restorative journey. I mean, you started as an aspiring artist, but along that journey of, gaining influence and having incredible best-selling books that come out, you're being a leader, you're doing all this stuff, it's shaped who you are through that journey. Can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah, I think oftentimes you begin your journey on a path of self-discovery, of learning who you are and not realizing that you've been shaped by so many different things that have happened in life, negative and positive. And for me, I think there were a lot of traumatic instances that obviously shaped me and formed me. But in my process of healing was an immense amount of authenticity. And so just being authentic, just being transparent and allowing people to see where I was, and having a close-knit community who could really articulate and say to me, this is what I see in you. This is what I believe is happening in your life. This is where I think your gifts and your strengths are. And so I would say, on the journey, obviously you begin to believe all the things that are said about you outside of that circle, but the restorative process is listening to the voices inside the circle who really know you and can affirm and encourage you to keep moving in the direction that you should be moving in. And so that's what's been my journey.
Out of curiosity, this is a follow-up question to that. How many people is that? Because like there's a lot. I mean, whatever work you're doing, everyone has somebody says you should do this, right? Is it a really small circle for you?
Yeah, I think I kind of look at it in terms of, for me, I have 3 circles.
Okay.
So there's this exterior circle, right? The furthest one out. And that is, just voices that I may come into contact with. It's like, okay, I hear you. I don't really know you, but I hear you. I respect you. You're a human being. Thank you for your insight and wisdom. I'll keep that. The second circle are people that are a little closer, right? That just, there's more proximity, there's more connection. Maybe you know someone that I'm really close with, or maybe we've met more than a few times, and you're trustworthy. And so those are voices that I pay attention to, obviously. Like, okay, this person means well. Maybe we don't hang out every day, but they mean well, and they have my best interest in mind, I believe. And then there's that third circle, the inner circle. And that inner circle are people that I trust, who don't need anything from me, who don't want anything from me. More often than not, they're people who are unashamed to just tell me the painful truth about myself. But there's there's so much currency, relational currency there, that I can receive that. And so that may be, I don't know, a handful of people for you, but that tends to be pretty small for most people.
I love it. So in your book, you talked about this book that also inspired you, The Body Keeps a Score. And can you tell us more about that message and how it really impacted you?
Yeah. The Body Keeps a Score essentially is the idea that we store trauma, right? If I break my toe, I put a cast on it or whatever. There's a time period where I acknowledge it happened and then it heals. Well, for emotional wounds, they don't heal like that. The body does not say, oh yeah, that was a long time ago when that happened. It's as if it happened yesterday for a lot of these emotional wounds. So something you may have experienced as a 10-year-old, without healing, without the proper, treatment for that, you're still feeling and reeling from that every day. It's almost like it's still bleeding. So your body's keeping the score of undealt with traumas and undealt with pains. And I think for me, the road to success in a lot of ways was me trying to fix my own trauma, because I have a lot of issues with my father not being in my life and affirmation. So every award, every hit record was me trying to get the wound of my dad not saying you're good enough from outside sources. So it's never being healed. I'm just stuffing it and filling that void with, vain cheers. And so I'm still craving that. It's not until I did the work, counseling, therapy, go if you can, where I was able to deal with those internal issues and that historical trauma. So now I'm not living to earn other people's affirmation. I'm walking out of already knowing I am somebody, I am affirmed. Yeah.
And that doesn't just you don't just flip a switch. That's like a continuous thing, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, restoration is it's a journey, not a destination, It's like I got my father-in-law's 34 Chevy restored, and it was his dying wish that I would restore his car before he passed away. And we did this amazing job on the car, it looks amazing, but you still have to keep it maintained. It doesn't just stay like that. It's like a constant process, and that's us.
So I have this concept I've been thinking about as I'm a nonprofit leader. What would it look like for me to be a pro at what I do? And nobody claims nonprofit leaders as pro. They NBA players, artists, you have accolades with this. You become known in the field for this, but in our work, we're just always doing the work, right? And so I'm curious for you, but I think that we do have pros. I think that we have the opportunity to grow in that space and to be the best that we can possibly be in that space. So for you, I'd love for you to think back of your journey. What were the turning points where you're I don't want to say you were trying to make it and then you made it, whatever, but it might have been. There's probably moments you're I had to change something about my process, something about my preparation, I don't know, that turned you into a pro at what you do. Has anyone asked you this, by the way, before?
No, that's great. It's funny, I remember, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell's book, I'm not sure which one it was, where he talked about the 10,000 hour rule. Yeah. And after you put in 10,000 hours, then you're really you are a professional, so to speak. You're excellent at your craft. And I didn't know this going in. I think I was always aspirational. I always saw there's another level and another level and another level. Okay, we went out to this country. Let's go to another country, another country, another country. Let's keep reaching, keep going. But I remember, a couple pivotal moments. One pivotal moment was I had to perform at a music award show. And I had never done it before, so I was like, "Oh shoot, this is it. This is the make or break moment." I'm sweating inside. I don't know how to. Oh, this is so much. And somebody backstage, it was a more seasoned artist at the time, pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, you nervous, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a little nervous. Yeah. I'm a little nervous." He said, "Do you play pro football?" I said, "No." "You play pro basketball?" I said, "I should, but I don't." And he says, "That's right, you don't. This is what you do. This is what you do. Go do it." And it comforted me. It was you know what? He's right. All I've been doing is this for the last few years. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. Let's go do this. And I got out there and I did what I had always been doing. I'd always been doing that. And it showed up in that moment. The time, effort, and practice and repetition, the reps showed up in that moment. And I was like, okay, I'm here.
That's a great way to look at it. You, in the midst of this, it sounds like another colleague of yours kind of gave you that advice, but
yes.
Now you're speaking into a whole bunch of new artists, right?
Yeah.
Which, you and I have had these conversations about, we're dealing with 20-somethings, their idealism, their ambition, their all the things that go with it, right? But you're mentoring these guys. And so first of all, tell us about some of the new talent that you see coming, and then what you're doing and how you're trying to build into them.
Yeah, oh man, there's so many phenomenal young artists out there, and I wear two hats. I'm an artist, and I wear a lot of hats, but I'm also I run a business, right? So there's an aspect of like helping these creatives understand that there's a business behind everything, you know, especially young idealistic people. There's infrastructure and concepts and order and things that have to work in order for this to happen. And so I think when you're young, you know, regardless of whether you're in the artistic world, when you're young, you want to be an artist. And when I say that, I mean you want to paint, you want to create, you want to dream, you want a vision. We're going to do all of this, right? You want to paint, you want to be an artist. And as you get older, it's turning into an architect and creating pathways and projects for people to travel through. So I have these young artists, you know, I think of like What Up RG, who's this amazing artist who's out of Atlanta, up in Gwinnett. So, and he's got, you know, he's a Mexican-American artist who's got this young Mexican-American population, a Mexican population who's looking up to him. And he's like, I'm a kid myself, you know, but how do I want to do all these things? And for me, it's architecting pathways and projects for him to navigate through, because he's so idealistic, and I need that too, right? We after you see a lot of things go wrong, right, you can tend to be cynical, and I don't want to be a cynic. I want to be a realist and not a cynic. But he's an idealist as a kid, and so I don't want to kill his idealism, but I want to introduce him to realism. And so I'm just trying to. It's an ebb and flow. I'm taking some of that zeal you have, and then I'm just marrying it to reality, okay? You know, the tour bus needs gas. How are we going to pay for that? You know what I mean? So right. Just explaining some of those things.
Yeah, and walking through them. It's interesting because I think, especially in the nonprofit space, like we're always, like sometimes our talent pool is people coming right out of college, right? Or something like that we can afford oftentimes, and we're trying to mold them into something well, we're trying to develop their skills, right?
Right.
And that's an interesting process. I think I have a feeling everyone's like, yep, I know what he's talking about. This is good. Okay, I saw you in a coffee shop one time. You probably don't remember this. And we had a conversation. It ended up being a long conversation. I was in a season that I was really exhausted, and you recommended a book to me called Margin, and by Richard Swenson, which actually, I don't know, he passed away this past year, which is kind of sad to hear, yeah. But an incredible book called Margin, and you had said, back then, I don't know if you still do this, but you had read it multiple years in a row, and it shaped some thinking for you. I'm curious, how do you set up life with Margin? Like literally, logistically, because there's a lot of people that want your time, they want your ideas, they want your presence, right? They want you to come and be a part of something like this. What does that look like for you and your family, and how do you structure that?
Yeah, so crazy. I just was looking at that book yesterday. Just crazy. Margin is having enough time to look forward to the future and to reflect on the past. If you're constantly in the moment all the time, and the future terrifies you because it stresses you out, and the past is like, I don't have time to think about the past, you don't have enough margin in your life, right? So for me, to create that space, my wife and I do something called reverse engineer our life. And so once a year, we will sit down and say, where do we want to be in 3 years, right? And we'll go through all these categories. Where do we want to be emotionally, relationally, spiritually? How many, you know, and so let's say we want to be closer relationally than we were the last 3 years. Well, how's that going to happen? All right, well, we need to make sure we have, you know, a vacation in every year. How many do we did one last year? Let's try to do 2, you know, and we'll reverse engineer and put this stuff on the calendar way in advance. And then, so that's kind of like something that we'll do on a regular basis, just pulling back the curtain. And oftentimes people say, you know, you're so busy working in your business or in your nonprofit, you're not working on your nonprofit. And so I have to work on myself and on my marriage and on my family, not just working in it. So we'll do that. And then the other thing that I've implemented is taking a day that nobody can touch, right? Like, this day is a day nobody can touch. And if I give you the permission to touch it, I'm going to create another day in my week that can't be touched.
To replace it, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I do that regularly, and because you just need that. And I know a lot of us live for the weekends, but oftentimes for me, I'm traveling on the weekends, or I have a lot of stuff to do. And so my weekend has to be during the week, because I can't. I'm glad though, because the stores are crowded on the weekends anyway. Y'all can have it. But yeah, that's what I tend to do to create margin in my life.
That's interesting. So, I mean, I think about like the nonprofit leader. It's like, I had a conversation with someone recently that they're doing like their work Monday through Friday, but then Saturdays is when they get volunteers, and Sundays people want to do some service project, and so it ended up being 7 days a week. So like, it's interesting to get your take on it, because you're like, yeah, my weekends are when my business happens too, right? But you have to somehow replace that.
You have to. I think we're in an era now where mental health is extremely. We have more information on it. It's not as stigmatized. And you've got to take care of your mental health. If you're no good for the people you're serving, then you're no good, right? So you've got to take some time to make sure you're healthy and you're good, so that you can continue to do the work that you feel like you need to do.
And for you, I mean, that's turned into creating margin, helped your family, obviously. It helped your mental health, but it also created opportunity for you to serve in the community, right?
Yes.
So talk about some of the stuff you've been doing and what you've learned through that.
Yeah, so that was big for me, especially over the last year. Being able to not be going, allow me to stop, reflect, and say, what am I passionate about? And what brings me life? What brings me excitement and energy? And man, I really am burdened for marginalized communities. Children in those communities, people who are experiencing homelessness, people who are incarcerated. Those things just bring out something special in me. They bring life to me. And so I've gotten to work very closely with a school locally called Peace Preparatory Academy, which has been phenomenal, just seeing that school go from an idea in 2015 to we're moving into 2021, 22 with sixth graders, K through 6. And that's amazing to me. Being able to work with organizations in the Grove Park area and just see that community thrive and see families not get kicked out of their homes because of COVID. Being able to work in the prison systems and sit and talk to incarcerated people and hear their woes and fight for their causes because no one on the outside world cares, and take care of them with masks, and on and on goes the pattern. And I could talk about these folks all day, but at the end of the day, I just realized that I find joy and excitement in being a restorer and a catalyzer in these broken places, and especially in Atlanta. Like, wow. It's something where my feet are is where I feel like is where I really can serve the most, and so that means a lot for me here.
Do you ever get tired, man? You just keep going. Like, what is enough? Do you struggle with that? Like, what is enough? I mean, if my wife would be like, what is enough, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yes, you do get tired. Yes, there is that reality of like you're just going. Yes. But it's more compartmentalized, and people hate that. But you have to discipline yourself and really be on a legit. I live by my calendar in a lot of ways, right? So, and that's just the way that I feel like I'm most effective. It's saying, this is when this has to be done, and it's not like I can't wait for inspiration. I have to discipline myself to find it in this time period where I'm at right here. So I can't just sit there and like, I'll just wait till I get inspired. It's like, no, you have from 9 to 4 to find some inspiration.
Inspiration, right.
And so work it. And then doing the work I found in the community helps me in so many other ways, right? It keeps me authentic. And if I'm in those spaces and places and I'm hearing these stories, I have something to write about. I have music to write because I'm in those places and spaces and around these people. And then the last thing I'll say is, it's all categorized for me. It's kind of like, I prioritize my own personal health and wellness. And so that sounds selfish, but it's not, because if I'm not any good, I'm no good for anybody else.
So true.
And then it's my family. Then they're prioritized. My wife comes first before my kids, just being 100, because, you know, when I open,
she could listen to this.
that's what listen.
I'm just
And I don't want any smoke. I don't want any problems. Okay.
no, it's true though.
But yeah, you never see kids mad because daddy's spending too much time with mommy. It's like stay together, y'all. We want y'all to stay together.
Yeah.
And then it's work, and then whatever I have left after that, man, I'm serving. You know, I'm serving with it. So all the categories and boxes are checked by that point in time. Most people just serve. Their family gets the leftovers, and they don't give themselves anything, and then they just wither away and they die.
So what if there's somebody listening right now that like that's where they're at? You know, if they really if they looked back at what they did over the last 3 months, it was all giving which is like awesome, right? It's very selfless, but they're burnt out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to them?
So oftentimes, if you think of it in terms of like a giant cruise ship, right? And this cruise ship is cooking through the ocean. And, you know, most folks are on this cruise ship, and it's cooking through the ocean, and they're in the middle of the ocean by the time they realize, I don't have enough gas to get to my destination. Like, I'm out. But instead of stopping and asking for help, they just try to figure it out, right? Let me just see if I can put a rope around my waist and swim and pull this ship. That's ridiculous, right? Nobody would ever do that. And it goes back to margin. The reality of it is you're not going to be able to carry all that weight and pull all of that. You weren't built for that in the first place. So you got to stop and assess and ask for help. And that's okay. If it wasn't okay for you to ask for help, if it wasn't okay to need help, then you wouldn't be helping the people that you're helping right now. It's okay to need help. It's okay to say, hey, I don't have it right now. And I think it humbles us and reminds us that we are not above those that we're serving. We are with them, broken in the same ways that they're broken. And so as much as they need help, so do we. And so I would tell you to stop. Just stop the ship. You know, I understand you feeling like, well, if I don't do this, nobody else will. And the reality is, if you don't get help, then nobody's going to be there to help them. You know, so stop your ship, get help, so you can help those that you're helping.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
This gathering today is all about like this sounds so businessy, accelerating impact, right? Like, right? But you've had those ambitions in your work, right? You want to grow what you're doing. You want to have more people listen to music. You want to have more people hear your story. It's like, if you're going to create something, you want as many people as possible to experience it, right?
Yeah.
What have you learned through those ambitions and those seasons?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. I think it's, you know, all about utility, right? What purpose does this serve? This thing I'm chasing, right? What's the utility of it? Because oftentimes our identity is so wrapped up into what we're chasing after that the utility of it is our sense of worth, value, and purpose. And that's when you're in the danger zone, right? That's when it's all bad. There's a story of, you know, soldiers who were fighting out in the Middle East, and you know, their trucks were getting blown up by bombs that were mines. And so what they began to do is they began to weld pieces of metal onto the bottom of these trucks so they wouldn't blow up. Well, base found out about this, the general, and the base finds out and says, hey, you guys are not allowed to weld that stuff on the bottom. And they're like, well, if we don't weld this stuff on here, we'll die. You know, and they're like, well, that's not sanctioned, that's not ordered. And it becomes that it was a tension between, hey, this is not what it was designed for, and we can't, we don't know what's going to happen if you do this. Well, in the same way, I think we begin to weld on our ambitions, and say, well, if I don't do this and I don't do this, then I won't survive. And it's like that's really not what you were made for. Your identity, your worth, your purpose is not wrapped up in your ambitions, right? You are valuable before you take off out that door, and you've got to know that, so that your ambitions are not about you, but they're about a goal, a mission. What's the purpose? What's the value? Who does it serve? What's the end goal for this? And if in any way at the end of it you feel as if you're more valuable a person because of it, then that ambition is going to terrorize you in the end, right? Because what you're ultimately saying too, especially in the nonprofit world, is that anybody who doesn't have that ambition is worthless, right? Anybody who's not pursuing that goal or accomplishing that goal is worthless, and that kind of goes against everything you're doing in the first place. And so it's a dance, man, and I've struggled with it. I don't have it down, but I can tell you how it hurts you. That's what I can tell you.
Yeah, I think about that because, like, in this space, it's like the stuff that we are a part of matters, right? Like, it's like, well, if I don't do this, then this person won't get that, and so you can find a way to justify all of that along the journey, which is super hard to process.
Oh, it's tough, man. It's tough. And I mean, we're all prone to it. We all, I mean, it's a thing. Who doesn't want to feel good about the things that they've accomplished and the dreams that they have? But it does get to a place where, is this your dream for these folks, or is this what's best for these folks? And that's a tough spot to be in.
Whew, that's a lot to process right there. Like, you got to bring all that. It's the last session, the last thing. I'm starting to read.
Hey, man, I really came to paint the building, so I didn't. That's all I'm here to do. You guys pulled me up here. I came to paint.
All right, last question for you. I'd love for you to just look into the camera, and before you do that, think about. I mean, there's a couple hundred nonprofit leaders that are doing the work. You know these people, right? You've been with them, you've heard their tensions, you see them giving their life to this work, which is amazing, right? I'd love for you to take a moment and just speak a little bit of encouragement into their life today.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, thank you, right? If you haven't heard that enough, thank you sincerely. I'm the product of folks like yourself. I say it all the time. I am public school educated, and if it weren't for volunteers who volunteered in my life, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I had people investing in me. I was able to do things that weren't able to be done because of folks like you. So your work matters. Everything you do matters. You matter, whether or not what you're doing right now is seen, it comes to fruition in the way you thought it would. It matters, and I would just encourage you to stay the course, right? There's so many like one-liners. I could rattle a bunch of one-liners off that'll be like, oh, that's good, I'm gonna write that down. But the reality is, I just want you to know you're seen, you're heard, you're valuable, and the work that you're doing is literally bringing hope, peace, life to others, and even in the smallest ways. And I always want people to know that and remember that even the smallest things you do make the biggest difference in the lives of the people that you're affecting. So thank you. We appreciate it.
I love it. Let's thank Lecrae for your time here. I appreciate all the wisdom you brought, and I think it's a total encouragement to everyone here.
I hope so, man. Thank you, man. It's great.
Appreciate it.